Lesson 20, The Performance Arts, Reviews and Critiques. Hello, and welcome to this lesson. Today, we are going to learn useful vocabulary for describing plays, films, television programs, music, and other performances. We will also look at expressions connected with critical success, failure, auditions, rehearsals, and the work of performers. A. Describing works and performances. A television series may be described as overrated when people consider it better than it really is. For example, that television series is overrated. A story or plot is hackneyed when the same idea has been used so many times that it has become boring. For example, the plot was so hackneyed. A play can be described as disjointed when its different parts do not connect clearly and the events are not presented in an easy-to-follow order. For example, the play was disjointed and difficult to follow. A story is far-fetched when it is extremely difficult or impossible to believe. For example, the film Green Aliens from Mars was rather far-fetched. A work may be called risque when it goes against accepted social standards and may shock or offend some people. For example, the play was a little risque, and some religious leaders criticized it. A gripping film is exciting and keeps your attention throughout. For example, it was a gripping film from beginning to end. A harrowing film or documentary is extremely upsetting. For example, it was a harrowing documentary about war and refugee camps. A moving story makes the audience feel sadness, sympathy, or pity. For example, it was a moving story about a child whose mother dies. A memorable or unforgettable performance remains in your mind for a long time afterwards. For example, what a truly memorable performance. A performance is understated when it is presented in a simple, controlled, but attractive way. For example, the ballerina gave an understated performance. A play that is tedious is boring, particularly because it continues for too long. For example, the play was long and tedious. Something that is hilarious is extremely funny. For example, that new stand-up comedian is hilarious. The image in this lesson shows an audience laughing and applauding enthusiastically, illustrating a performance that has received a very positive reaction. Language help, describing writing. The adjectives used to describe performances can also describe writing. For example, the plot of a novel may be far-fetched, gripping, hilarious, hackneyed, moving, or disjointed. B. Successful performances. When an audience responds positively, the applause may be described as deafening. Deafening applause is extremely loud. For example, the audience clearly loved the play, and the applause was deafening. A production that receives glowing reviews receives extremely positive comments from critics. For example, it was not surprising that the play received glowing reviews. At the end of a concert, the audience may call for an encore. An encore is an additional performance given after the planned program has finished because the audience wants to hear more. For example, the audience called for several encores after the concert. A standing ovation occurs when the audience stands and applauds at the end of a performance. For example, she received a standing ovation for her performance as Juliet in Romeo and Juliet. An artist may win an award for an album, film, play, or performance. For example, her latest album has already won 3 awards. An up-and-coming actor is an actor who is likely to become very successful in the future. For example, Sam Dell won the award for Best Up-and-Coming Actor. A masterpiece is an exceptionally great work of art. For example, the critics generally agree that her new symphony is a masterpiece. Limited and repeated roles. An actor becomes typecast when they are repeatedly given the same type of role. For example, she has become typecast as a middle-aged mother in television drama series. This means that directors and audiences now strongly associate her with that particular kind of character. Negative reviews and failure. A performance that is panned or slated by the critics receives extremely negative reviews. For example, his latest opera was panned by the critics. This reaction may be surprising when the artist's previous work has been universally lauded. To be universally lauded means to be highly praised by almost everyone. A production bombs when it is a failure. For example, the play bombed in London's West End, although it had been successful in New York. An audience may boo a show when it strongly disapproves of the performance. For example, the show was booed on its first night. A total flop is a complete failure. For example, the new television soap has turned out to be a total flop. An actor is miscast when they are unsuitable for the role they have been given. For example, Novak was definitely miscast as the father in that film. A performance is unconvincing when it does not seem natural, believable, or real. For example, his performance was very unconvincing. See, auditions and rehearsals. An audition is a short performance in which an actor, singer, or other performer demonstrates their ability in the hope of being chosen for a role. For example, Megan performed well in the audition. After being selected, performers attend rehearsals. Rehearsals are practice sessions held before the public performance. For example, Megan is now busy attending rehearsals for the play. Interpretation and versions. A performer's interpretation is their particular way of understanding and presenting a song, character, or piece of music. For example, I liked her interpretation of the song yesterday. The original version is the first recorded or performed form of a song or other work. Later performances by different artists are called covers. For example, I prefer the Beatles' original version. In my opinion, none of the covers is as good. Portrayal. An actor's portrayal is the picture or impression they create of a character through their performance. For example, the actor's portrayal of the mother in the film was very tender.